This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Thursday, May 6th. Welcome to Africa 54. We continue to work remotely because of the COVID-19 pandemic, but what hasn't changed is our commitment to bringing you the latest and most important news from the African continent and around the world. This is today's Africa 54. We begin in Nigeria, where kidnappers have released the remaining 29 students they were holding captive on Wednesday, nearly 2 months after abducting them from a forestry college in Kaduna State. Gunmen took 39 students from the Federal College of Forestry Mechanization in northwest Nigeria on March 11 and previously released 10 of them. The newly released students arrived at a police headquarters in Kaduna City on Wednesday night, looking weak and wearing dirty, torn clothing. One female student could not walk alone and was carried into the building, while another was rushed to the hospital. Police did not allow journalists to speak to the students. More than 700 people have been abducted from schools in northwest Nigeria since December in a rush of kidnapping for ransom in the volatile region. French journalist Olivier Dubois, who went missing from the northern Malian city of Gao last month, has appeared in a video in which he says he has been kidnapped by an Al-Qaeda affiliate. Angela Ukumadu reports.
A French journalist who disappeared in Mali last month has appeared in a video saying he has been kidnapped by jihadist militants. In the video, Olivier Dubois says he was taken by Al-Qaeda-affiliated group JNIM, which has carried out a number of attacks in Mali. He urges authorities to do all they can to free him. Reporters Without Borders Africa researcher Arnaud Froger says they know Dubois was in the northern city Gao on April 8.
We know that he was in his hotel, that he left, that he did not come back for lunch, and that 2 days later he was to return to Bamako, the capital of Mali, but that he did not arrive. And so we were alerted about his troubling disappearance.
Dubois appears to be the first French national taken hostage by jihadists in Mali since a French aid worker, Sophie Petronen, was freed in October last year. She had been abducted near Gao in late 2016. French civilians have long been favored targets for kidnapping in West Africa's arid Sahel region, partly because of perceptions that the French government is prepared to pay ransoms. France has repeatedly denied paying ransoms for hostages. French government spokesman Gabriel Attal confirmed Dubois' disappearance, but stopped short of calling it a kidnapping. He said authorities were in contact with the family and carrying out technical checks on the authenticity of the video.
That report by Angela Ukumadu of Reuters. A 2-day state visit to Kenya by Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu Hassan has begun to pay off, with Kenya's President Uhuru Kenyatta ordering his officials to clear a standoff at the borders to allow goods to be ferried between the two countries. However, the highlight of her visit was her address to Kenyan lawmakers. I spoke to VOA Swahili Service reporter Kennedy Wandera, who began by explaining President Hassan's message to Kenyan parliamentarians.
Parliamentarians have a duty to implement and help the governments to implement the commitments that have been made in this particular talk. And the key of this is that they have the power to ratify the protocols that have been agreed between President Samia Suluhu and President Uhuru Kenyatta.
There was talk about renewed relationship between the two countries. What should each country expect from the other moving forward?
The two presidents insisted on having a joint commission, a commission that is going to look at the restrictions that have been there, the challenges that have been there, And the essence of doing this is to ensure that there is unhindered access of goods from Tanzania to Kenya and vice versa.
And Ken, I heard a little excerpt of her speech, and she spoke entirely in Kiswahili language, but with deeper meaning for Kenya's lawmakers and Kenyans. How do you sum it up, Ken?
Yeah, this is just a continuation of the efforts that Tanzania has been implementing in Kenya. For instance, Tanzanian Speaker Job Ndugai was in Nairobi and launched the standing orders for the parliament, meaning that they can now debate their motions and other issues in Swahili. And therefore, her speaking in Swahili today has huge significance in telling the members of parliament that Kiswahili is a language that helps us to share our values, and therefore there is a greater need for the two countries to continue ensuring that they use Kiswahili in their debates in parliament for the benefit of the two people who use Kiswahili as a core language of communication.
And what did you take from her remarks about Kenya's constitution being written in Kiswahili, and how did Kenyan lawmakers react to that?
The lawmakers were so happy to hear this because it is very critical, because there have been challenges of government implementing its policies, and sometimes the government may communicate a certain policy, but the people on the ground will not be able to understand what the government is trying to inform the public, and therefore it's very important that Swahili is used to connect the people in the villages and connect the people at the top government levels.
You've spoken to several women there in Nairobi, including young women. What did her presence in Kenya bring to the women of that country?
Women are so much upbeat about Samia Suluhu coming to Nairobi, and they say that this is a testament that a woman can. A woman in the name of Samia Suluhu came to Nairobi and told people that she can lead a government and a delegation to Kenya. And therefore they say that coming to Kenya is a testament that women can, and she insisted on developing affirmative action policies that are going to help Kenyan women to come out and get their space on the table, get their space on the political front. And there has been a case here that up to now, as we're speaking, Kenya has not passed a two-third gender rule. And therefore, women have been seeing even Parliament as President Samia Suluhu addresses, saying, yes, women can, and yes, we can deliver.
What was her pledge to Kenya in how Tanzania is going to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic moving forward?
She has said that Tanzania cannot live in isolation. Tanzania must be ready to work with its neighbors, and one of its neighbors is Kenya. And therefore, there is a greater need to develop protocols about COVID-19 and fight this particular pandemic. And the two governments must work hand in hand to ensure that safety and precautionary hygiene measures are followed.
How did the two presidents address security issues?
On the Kenyan side, Kenya has been battling Al-Shabaab. And on the Tanzanian side, they've been battling insurgents from Mozambique. And therefore, President Kenyatta and President Samia Suluhu say there is greater need to collaborate on this particular front to combat terrorism, because they can agree on any other collaborative efforts, but without combating terrorism and other security challenges between the two countries, it completely can degrade what they have agreed on.
What is President Samia taking back home from Kenya?
President Samia Suluhu says Nairobi has really elevated her stature, and she says that she's very proud of Kenya, and just addressing the Kenyan parliament is a huge honor because this is the second president from the United Republic of Tanzania who has addressed Kenyan parliament. And for this case, she has addressed a joint session of Kenya Parliament, that is the Senate and the National Assembly, and therefore she's getting back home and saying that yes, her successful trip to Nairobi has happened, and therefore it's time now to get back to work.
Kennedy Wandera is a VOA Swahili Service reporter. President Biden set a goal of reducing U.S. greenhouse gas emissions by half by 2030. His pledge to a virtual summit of world leaders in April is welcomed by those hit hardest by climate change and looking for as much quick action as possible. Here's VOA's Arasha Basadi with more.
Scientists point to climate change as the reason for the increase in the number of extreme weather events. NASA's senior climate advisor Gavin Schmidt says the problem starts with rising temperatures.
As the planet warms, the ocean absorbs that heat, and that's causing the ocean to expand. So that fills the basins more and more. But of course, as we're warming, we're also melting ice. We're melting ice in mountain areas. Glaciers are retreating. All of that water is effectively ending up in the ocean.
Schmidt says the planet's rising temperatures lead to drier land, which in turn leads to wildfires like this one in Mexico. Edgar Godoy oversees Mexico for the Rainforest Alliance, a nonprofit group working to protect nature while helping farmers. He says fires, floods, and melting glaciers have become routine.
And every year in Mexico, as I think in the whole world, we are always saying, oh, this was the hottest year in the last 5 years. But it's happening year after year after year. So this is something that it is not changing, no?
About 1/3 of Mexico City's 20 million residents is affected by water shortages. Under near constant threat of drought, Godoy says farmers can't depend on their crops alone.
As they don't have like the income that they were expecting from a specific crop. Maybe they will need to go to the forest or the rainforest and clear cut it to sell some wood or some other things that are having impact on deforestation or degradation of forest and rainforest.
As trees disappear from clear cutting and their roots no longer hold dirt in place, landslides and flooding increase. Intan Fardinatri of the Rainforest Alliance in Indonesia says these natural disasters hit hardest those who make a living off the land.
The agriculture rural community, it's always like they are in a very remote area, and by having landslide, damaging the infrastructure, so they are even remote than before, isolated.
Fardinatri says the erratic weather patterns have cut Indonesia's coffee production in half, and the country's cocoa and coffee farmers have watched their livelihoods shrink.
When they were young, it wasn't like this, and now the soil getting exhausted, soil is dry.
She says the clash between economic development and protecting the environment may make those taken for granted staples increasingly unsustainable to grow. Arash Basadi, VOA News.
India's COVID-19 tally surpassed 21 million on Thursday. More than 412,000 new cases were registered across the country in the past 24 hours, according to the Health Ministry. As many as 3,900 deaths took place in the country since Wednesday morning. The Indian diaspora living in the United States is watching in horror as the South Asian nation battles the devastating surge of COVID-19. More with VOA correspondent Maria Diallo.
For Indians living in America, the daily crush of dark news from the homeland is a reminder that the pandemic is far from over. Virginia resident Varsha Mehta.
It's heartbreaking. They don't have beds. People are laying. There is 4,000 people are dying every day, and it's a unbelievable situation.
Indian Americans say the world's largest democracy was not adequately prepared.
India's infrastructure is just not built to handle something like this, just given overcrowding and the amount of people crammed into just small spaces at all times. And I think once the first wave kind of settled down, it was, like across the world, it was this sense of, okay, back to normal. But everybody experienced the second wave in some sense, and it's just hitting India a lot harder.
I definitely have elders in my family who've gotten vaccinated or at least gotten first dose, but you can definitely tell that they hasn't been efficient enough, and you could say that that's the fault of the government probably, to not, be devoted to committing and getting the resources that they need before lifting all these restrictions and saying that, COVID is not in India right now, it'll be fine.
With over 20.2 million cases, India has the second highest number of COVID-19 infections behind the United States and the third highest number of deaths behind the U.S. and Brazil. Tuesday, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki told reporters the United States is continuing to send aid to the hard-hit South Asian nation.
6 air shipments funded by USAID have departed the United States, 5 of which have already arrived in India. These flights include health supplies, oxygen supplies, N95 masks, rapid diagnostic tests, and medicine. And these are a lot of the components that the Indian government has expressed a vital need for. More flights are on the way, with total assistance expected to exceed $100 million.
But for many, the aid may be too late. Michigan resident Kalpana Bakad notes the impact on her family in India.
I have lost an aunt. I have lost a sister-in-law to COVID. And we have had many members of our family who have, who have been impacted by COVID, and they have recovered, luckily, but it's real.
The Indian diaspora in the U.S. is doing its part to raise money and help ease the suffering of so many. Indian American Chandru Asharia of Michigan.
This is one time that the entire Indian American community has come together and is pouring, the kind of support that you see for the situation back in India is extraordinary.
For the more than 4 million people of Indian descent in the U.S., a dichotomy of sorts as vaccinations increase in the U.S. and the pandemic rages on an ocean away. Mariama Jalou, VOA News.
Let us know what you think about Africa 54. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come, a strong signal to world leaders as Facebook extends ban on former President Donald Trump. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Africa 54. As the number of COVID cases in India rise and overwhelm the healthcare system, many from the country now living in the U.S. have watched helplessly as friends and family grapple with the virus. Now some in the Midwest state of Illinois are mobilizing to help from a distance. VOA's Ken Farabaugh reports.
Every morning, just checking the internet for the latest news from India is a dismal ritual for entrepreneur Anil Joshi.
In my own family, my cousin family actually have 4 people, all 4 family members got infected. A childhood friend of mine died actually.
In recent weeks, 7 members of Ashfaq Syed's extended family in the Indian city of Hyderabad have contracted the virus. He says all 7 have since passed away.
It is going crazy, I can say, and I have been getting messages every day of somebody passing away, especially from my family and friends and loved ones.
Anil Joshi's company, IntelliH, is developing technology that would allow India's medical professionals to remotely assess and monitor patients. He has a team of 35 employees in India advancing the project, but the virus is slowing down their work.
In our own group, in the last 3 weeks, we have 4 people who are actually infected and not able to work because their mom or dad got them first, and obviously Indian families are very closely knit family. They live together.
Joshi and Syed are among many trying to answer India's call for help.
People need oxygen supply there. People need medicines like remdesivir and others.
We need ventilators because some of my friends requested us to arrange some ventilators, donations and all those things.
While there are logistical challenges in collecting and shipping equipment to India, Syed says sending money has provided immediate assistance.
Oxygen, the ox cylinder, it used to be 2,000 Indian rupees earlier. Now it has shoot up to 20,000, 30,000. So because of shortage of oxygen, so we need to arrange some funds.
South Asian communities throughout Illinois are joining the effort.
Can I have your name, please?
Sajjad Bhatti is from India's neighboring country of Pakistan. He runs a restaurant in the Chicago suburb of Naperville and has barely survived the financial hardship created by COVID lockdowns in the U.S. While his own family in Pakistan is healthy and, so far, safe from the virus, his heart goes out to those in India who are suffering.
It doesn't matter they're Muslim, Hindu, whatever, they are praying for all the India. In our mosque, in our churches, everywhere they're praying for India.
Even though his business hasn't returned to normal, Bhatti is helping Syed raise about $10,000 to buy medical supplies in India. He sees it as a goodwill gesture between peoples of two estranged nations.
Anybody in India, they're their brothers too. It is the biggest opportunity, and we hope we're going to build a bridge and everything will calm down in our region.
Outreach that is needed in India, where COVID-19 is taking a horrific toll. Kane Fairbaugh, VOA News, Naperville, Illinois.
With an estimated 1/3 of the U.S. population hesitant to get a vaccine for COVID-19, a new study indicates that approaches by faith community leaders can help convince people to get the shot. VOA's Laura Bowman reports from a church in Washington, which was the site of the city's first reported COVID-19 case.
Christ Church Georgetown is one of the oldest churches in Washington. It's also where COVID-19 arrived when the Reverend Timothy Cole became the city's first coronavirus patient. It earned him a new nickname.
Patient Zero, which is a name that it's going to take a bit of living down, I think.
The Christian understanding of love. Cole has been vaccinated, and so has nearly everyone in church this day. He's urged his parishioners to get the shot for their own health and for the welfare of others. And he's happy for more faith leaders to do the same.
I think there were good things that came out of me catching COVID, and I certainly alerted this community very early to the risks of it, and perhaps this community benefited in the long run by being, very quick to react.
The Lord be with you. On the Sunday prior to Rector Tim Cole being admitted to the hospital for COVID-19, he helped give communion to hundreds of congregants here at Christ Church. It was a wake-up call for the community.
I happen to have been a parishioner here at the last service that Tim presented before he was diagnosed with COVID-19. That experience made us become very aware and made us, I would say, much more cautious and aware of what we should be doing and not doing.
A recent survey of Americans indicated 1/3 of them would look to a religious leader when deciding whether to get a COVID-19 vaccine. And over half say getting vaccinated is a way to make good on the aspiration of loving one's neighbor.
People who are more hesitant, particularly in white evangelical Protestant and Black Protestant groups, indicate that religious appeals would work for them, that these things could help get them across the line from being vaccine hesitant to actually getting the vaccine.
Now that we're closing in on what's hopefully the end of this experience, I think that people in the pulpit, right, people in the pulpits, be it in churches or mosques or synagogues, can really help their parishioners and their communities, understand the importance of getting vaccinated and really taking it seriously.
Vaccines are now freely available for all people living in the United States who are at least 16 years old. The CDC says at least 30% of the population has been vaccinated so far. Laurel Bowman, VOA News, Washington.
The recent decision about Facebook and former President Donald Trump sends a signal to world leaders everywhere that to use social media, they have to play by a set of rules that are still forming. Tina Trin has more.
For world leaders and other VIPs who use Facebook and social media, the recent decision by the quasi-independent Facebook Oversight Board about former President Donald Trump is supposed to send a message.
The same rules that apply to all Facebook users should also apply to influential users. Influential users should not be judged against a separate set of rules.
But the decision raises more questions about what exactly those rules are and what it means for world leaders who want to get their message out, putting a harsh spotlight again on tech's power over online speech.
We will never give up.
This week, the board, made up of journalists, activists, and lawyers, said that the social networking giant made the right call when it suspended Trump after the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol in January, but erred in making the ban indefinite. The board gave Facebook 6 months to make a final decision on Trump's account. Facebook said it would carefully review the board's recommendations.
Facebook had sort of punted the decision to the oversight board, putting Trump in an indefinite suspension and kind of leaving it to the oversight board to make the final call. But the oversight board is punting right back to Facebook and saying, no, this is on you. You need to clarify your policies and then decide whether this man meets them or not.
The board wrestled with the complex interplay between free speech and protecting people, said Emma Alonzo.
In international human rights law, there is strong protection for freedom of expression for everyone, but there's also a recognition that some kinds of speech can actually lead to real-world violence.
There's been mixed reaction to the decision, with conservative lawmakers in the U.S. criticizing Facebook for keeping Trump off, and others saying he should have been permanently banned. Trump didn't address the decision, but criticized technology companies on his new site Wednesday. One thing that should change, the board said, is making exceptions for world leaders whose postings, no matter how inaccurate or controversial, are deemed newsworthy because of their political standing.
This idea of a newsworthiness allowance, that things may be justified to be said on Facebook because they're newsworthy. We're saying if there's ever a balance, it has to be towards keeping people safe.
The vast majority of politicians in this world don't need these exceptions because they are not trying to undermine democracy or they are not trying to demonize entire communities.
The board's decision is a step closer to creating stronger rules, important especially when Facebook is operating in places with fragile democracies, said Wendy Vai.
They need to take a careful look at those policy recommendations because civil society and our own organization has been saying the exact same thing for so long, and it has been ignored, with the result being death and damage to democracies. They have their values, they need to live up to them.
Now that the ball is back in Facebook's court, political leaders, influential people, and its 2.8 billion users worldwide will have to wait and see if the social network makes changes. Tina Trin, VOA News.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, thanks for watching.